Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 4 of the Intel on AI podcast series. My name is Ryan Carson, and I'll be your co-host along with Tony Malgosmai, who is a software architect and evangelist here at Intel. I've been a CEO founder for the past 20 years, and I recently joined Intel to help build and support our global community of AI developers and founders. This season, we are evolving the podcast and moving from the theoretical to the real world use cases and how to engage and use AI in our businesses and lives. The updated format will include an assessment of recent AI events and news, plus discussion with relevant thought leaders in the industry. To kick off our new season, we are thrilled to introduce Nuri Cankaya, VP of AI Marketing at Intel. I think you're going to enjoy this episode, so let's get to it. First of all, Nuri, we know that AI is everywhere now, right? Every company, every person, every family is talking about it. And we're really kind of moving into this rapid phase of growth from research into actually using AI over the last 2 to 3 years. So where do you see us in the broad picture of people and AI and where we're all going?
I think you nailed it. Like, AI is literally everywhere, and we want to make sure Intel is helping that journey for all the customers, and our partners are making this happen. If you look at 18 months ago, we weren't where we are right now, not in terms of the technology, but also mentally. And it's really hard to predict what's going to happen in the short term, because every day we are waking up into a new evolution on AI. I think the rapid pace of innovation is really the hockey stick that we see. It's accelerated and it's hard to maybe keep up. But the good news is, again, Intel has you covered. So on a couple of things, I believe we will see more and more generative AI solutions in the near future. And in order to make that happen, we will see a lot of, let's say, computational power requirements with low power consumption to make it more affordable. And we will maybe unpack that a little bit, but if you look at the market size by 2026, just the GenAI will be $300 billion of market. So, and it's not only when we think about generative AI and all the solutions for enterprises, we see huge potential to disrupt many of the businesses, but also on the consumer side, all of us are consumers, right? So we have been using, I will call it generic computers for a decade or so. They have similar power, there was always a small bit of innovation, but we are now seeing this AI PC momentum. So getting that NPU, GPU, and CPU into one machine will disrupt how we do our productivity as individuals. It can be an enterprise boost on the creativity, but also on the personal side, all the gaming, all the video conferencing, all the tools that you do. This might include generating music, generating a lot of creative ideas on your PC. This is a crazy future for us. And just sharing maybe some numbers, but by 2028, 80% of the personal computers sold will be AI PCs. So this is from almost 0 to 80%. That's an amazing area that I think Intel is well positioned. So from that point of view, back to your question, I'm super excited about where AI is headed and how Intel is bringing AI everywhere.
So I think we're all seeing in our own lives just massive growth and adoption of AI. I know we all use AI daily in our tooling, but we all have families and friends. And sometimes it feels like there's two worlds right now where everything I do is touched by AI. I massively augment my output with AI. Every company I know is using AI. And then I ask my friend, who is, working at the shop next door, and they seem disconnected. And so, Tony, in your life, down on the ground, where do you think we are now versus where we're going with, quote unquote, normal folks using AI on a daily basis?
I think that's a really good question, and it's a really challenging question to answer because I think it is very different. Like all kinds of technology, as technology changes over time, we definitely see rates of adoption. And when you have that hockey stick growth that Nuri was talking about, usually the first thing we see, I think Gartner does research, you see that first I get the technical people getting excited, then I get enterprise getting excited, and then we get to the point where we affect people's everyday lives. And so we've had the enterprise jump with ChatGPT. People have heard about it. It affects people's daily lives. ChatGPT people are able to use, but only tech people are using it. I mean, right? Like my mom's not going to use it. But as we move into the AI PC space, and as we work with people like Microsoft to bring the NPU experience to you on your laptop, everybody's going to have that. You're going to have that personal experience of using AI the same way that people use Siri right now, which is kind of I'll say like a lightweight AI. Like my mom can use Siri. She uses to send text messages. As we get to AI PC, people with AI PCs are actually going to start integrating it into their life. And that's where we get that great trend of getting over the hump from it's a really cool tech thing to impacting the lives of everybody who has a laptop.
Right. At the moment, the favorite use of AI in my family is my son likes to make Magic the Gathering decks better with using ChatGPT. He's really excited about that. But you kind of see, the adoption of where people realize, oh, this is how it can help me do something I need to do. And therefore I'm going to dive in. And I think this kind of leads into the next topic. So we see AI in the cloud, right? So folks that are using ChatGPT are obviously using inference on the cloud. And we're seeing less usage on the edge at the moment, but we all know that's going to change, right? We're talking about AI PCs and handhelds. And I'm curious, and this is one of the reasons I was so excited to join Intel, is because Intel so deeply believes in open source and open standards that I believe we're going to start seeing models move to the edge that are open source, that are private and protected, that you don't need to move to the cloud to actually do inference. And so I'm sort of curious, how is this going to shake out like over the next, say, 5 years, right? Are people going to be running these small models locally on their phones or on their laptops? Nuri, how do you see this playing out?
Absolutely. I think the history repeats itself in terms of compute. So like as an old timer in this industry, I remember the network topologies, like when everything was on the mainframes and there was the thin client, you just like connect to a main server because that was the hardware restriction, right? So you cannot run everything. And then the same thing happened with like gigantic server systems where you just like reach out to your email, and then suddenly the power shifted towards the client, and we have seen like all this internet era like boosting all the mobile devices that we use every day. And eventually like cloud solution providers gain back the dominance, and then they said, wow, like I can stitch tons of servers on the cloud. And then this is exactly happening with AI. I mean, if you look at the large language models, let's take GPT-4 with a 1.7 trillion parameters as an example. So that's a big data. Like in order to like train that data set and really get something out of it and do all the inferencing and also fine tuning, you need a cloud scale provider type of infrastructure. But
some
as you
serious
said,
compute.
Yeah, it is a serious company. Yeah, it requires a lot of energy. It requires innovation, which our industry is not lacking for sure. But at the same time, like, do you really need, like, for precision, for example, you are checking an ultrasound image for like, let's say a kidney disease, like very specific thing. So then you might like throw like 20 billion parameter model. Like 20 billion is like still a billion with a B, but it's not trillion. So, but when you go down into that precision, you might identify your training data might be more effective rather than like loading all the Wikipedia, Reddit trash and everything like all together just to get maybe an ultrasound image outcome, right? So like if you are really targeted, this will be the near future. So, and we see community really like gathers around those kind of niches very well. So if you really identify what's needed, what's the best possible outcome for those large language models to become become nimble models, or small language models nowadays it's referred to, I think there's a slightly a higher chance of big adoption, because as you said, edge is a very important component. And when you think about edge, many people just think about IoT, hey, these are the remote sensors in the farms, and no, edge means also the client. We just covered how the personal computing era is changing with all this NPU power that you have on your machines, and hopefully in your mobile devices, and also across disconnected scenarios. Because one of the things, maybe we will unpack that one as well, security and privacy is a no-brainer for AI. If you're a company and if you want to protect your IP as a competitive advantage, you have to do all the inferencing and training on your own terms. And even when you drive some outcomes out of those, I think that should be well protected. So the privacy of your data secures that you still have the advantage of AI, and with more smaller language models, which are nimble, targeted to specific tasks, will be more successful on the long run. So long answer to your short question, but I definitely believe this is going to be where the industry is headed to. In the meantime, the data centers of the world, we will invent the next big challenge, which AGI. There will be a couple of AGIs. Is AGI going to be coming back to our client on that? We will see. But again, I think in the near future, I definitely see there will be more nimble models that are targeting offline scenarios or private scenarios. And maybe one last statistic. So only 1% of the world's data on the LLMs today. And every big GPT training engine is having hard time to find additional data points. So they're looking at synthetic data, AI is making up data for itself, which is is it the real, is it going to get better and better? Or 99% of the data still sits with individuals, on your phone, you have memories with your family, and you have all the years of history and knowledge of emails on your inbox, which is those are and many companies has years of data they collected on their business. So that represents 99% of the data available on the planet, which we haven't touched yet with the LLM. So there's a massive opportunity.
Yeah, there's so much data behind the wall. And it's the most valuable data, right? I keep saying, gosh, if an LLM just could listen to me all day and read my emails and see my texts, I could have a tremendously valuable tool. But I won't do that until I have privacy of that data, because I'm not going to ship that up, to OpenAI servers. So, Tony, we hear a lot about the concept of model routing now, this idea that there's actually a plethora of models, almost too many for developers to choose from. And, are you going to choose Mixtral, 822B, or are you going to choose XYZ? And I'm just curious, how do you think this is going to play out for folks that are building on top of AI? How do we choose the right models to use, and how is that going to be driven down to the edge and the device level where you just don't have the compute?
I think that there's a great big challenge there, in that the first thing that anybody has to do, because they're so complicated and expensive to build, the first thing you have to do is figure out whether or not it's going to solve your use case. Like anything else, you want to do a prototype. And I think that that's where kind of these OpenAI, Anthropic, Llama, however you want to get it, whether it's a closed or open model, probably doesn't matter so much as a business when you just want to try out, will this solve my problem? So I think you first start with those bigger models and figure out, do I at least get something decent as I'm using these models?
Does it sort of
and
work
then once you
and
do
give me
that,
what I want?
Yeah, exactly. And then once you do that, the next step is figuring out, okay, how do I take that and target my use case in a better way? So there's things that we talk about like RAG, right? So you have a large model, but you really want to focus it on a set of data. Retrieval augmented, it's going to be great, right? That's going to really help you as long as your large model is good enough, right? To avoid hallucinations, etc. But then there's also a lot of things that we talk now a lot about large language models, but there's obviously things like computer vision, where YOLO V8 is really fantastic. It's small. You can run it on the edge. So those are use cases that we actually already have. So we think about large language models of how do we deploy these super gigantic things, but we already have examples of how we can do something smaller and more targeted. And it's really a question of how do I, as a business, operationalize that? Because it's large language model is too complex for almost any company to build. There's only a couple in the world that can build it. So in that space, you're going to use your LoRa, you're going to use your RAG, and you're going to try to create subsets of data that you can target.
Absolutely.
But in other areas where you're using AI, like computer vision, that's something that is well known. And there are pipelines that, for example, Intel has that's going to help you integrate that quickly into your business. So rather than, a lot of people are starting from scratch and just saying, I got to start with large language models, ChatGPT. I think it's like everything else. Look at your business use case, figure out which thing matches with the data that you have, and then most likely you'll be able to find a way to target something that's out there and figure out whether or not you need to build something from scratch or whether you can use something open. And a lot of stuff is open right now because this community is very, very open.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks, Tony. For everybody listening, I'd encourage you to try a couple things. Number one is download a free tool like LM Studio, which works on Windows or PC, and then download a model from Hugging Face. And if you haven't been on Hugging Face, just go there and look at the models. And on the left, you can sort them by task. And so you think, oh, I just want to do, object categorization just to see. And then you open up LM Studio and you actually download the model. And I think most people are shocked to find out you can run a model locally offline. Running a large language model or any sort of deep model doesn't require an internet connection. And so I think learning that you can run models on the edge is thing one. And then thing two is going onto a site like Hugging Face and actually trying out models there. And then you can actually use, Intel has a lot of amazing tools for quantizing and reducing the size of models to run them locally effectively as well. And you realize, oh, there's a lot of this we can do locally with our data. Like Nuri, you're saying, some of the most valuable data is local, is private, and you can actually start building real solutions on top of that. So really excited to see how that shakes out.
Add to that, Ryan. So maybe for the listeners, if they want to test out like Intel's platform, and then like we will maybe discuss about Gaudi, but we always have like a place for developers to test out the latest and greatest, which is the Intel Developer Cloud. And the idea is really like providing all the latest and greatest hardware with all the tool sets that developer needs without a hassle. You don't need to set up servers and racks and everything. Like it's there, you register,
plug
you get
and play,
access
push a
to.
button.
Yeah, exactly. I think it will springboard many of the. It will be accelerating all the development solutions for AI for developers.
Absolutely. So actually, when I was applying for this job, I went on to IDC and spun up a Gaudi and actually used YOLO to categorize a ton of different images, and it was awesome. So absolutely, folks should check out Intel Developer Cloud and try out a model, try out various hardware platforms. It's really exciting to see. So speaking of cloud platforms, we have kind of large supercomputers being built by companies, right, that are meant to run their infrastructure that aren't going to be accessible. Then you have private clusters that are run by venture funds or accelerators, like the famous Andromeda cluster by Nat Friedman and his crew. And then you have on-prem kind of large, powerful clusters. We've been talking about tiny boxes. I'm kind of curious, like, for companies, because I think a lot of executives are going to be listening to this show. How should they be thinking about compute for their company? Should they be thinking about building on-prem to try things? Should they be using a cloud? Tony, how do you think people should think about this right now?
So right now, I think it's different from where we go. I think right now it exists in the cloud because that's the only way to get it. Like we said, we're kind of in that, as Nuri said, the hockey stick. It's hard for people to start kind of commoditizing AI, But I think where we're going is like Intel keeps saying AI everywhere, and it's really true. You mentioned tiny boxes, and you and I have been talking to the team that's building tiny boxes just because it's a cool project, right? I'm able to build a lot of AI into a box, into a system that I can put under my desk, right? Or at least close to under my desk, right?
Almost.
It's a box. It is a box. It's cool. So it's like a workstation. But I think that the answer is going to actually end up being both. Because you have this wide range of compute, as Nuri mentioned, and the answer is always over time. You want to do the compute as close to you as possible, as long as it's efficient and can get the job done. So again, when you talk about AI PC, there are things that you can do on the NPU and GPU, right, on that Meteor Lake platform, which is going to be great. There are things that you're not going to be able to do. That's just the reality of it. We call it an AI PC, but there are things that are going to be too big. So you need to have infrastructure, SDK, software, and that's where business are going to be able to add a lot of value in saying, I run the right things in the right space on your PC, but then sometimes you need something better. You're going to wait, you're going to go to the cloud, and you build that customer experience in such a way that it's seamless. So from the customer point of view, they see maybe some additional latency, but like 80-90% of the time they get a great experience. So I think that that's where it'll end up going, whether it's a tiny box, which is more powerful on-prem. You're going to have that growth of, I have a thin client, and then I have something a little bit in between, and then something a little bit larger in between, the same way that you've got like telco infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
Like your Netflix doesn't come from the cloud, even though they use like an AWS. It comes from the edge, right? Like I have Spectrum. They have servers on the edge with some Netflix stuff on it that's most popular, so they can serve it to me quickly. That's exactly what we're going to get with AI as well. That's how compute ends up growing.
100%. And I'm excited to see us get there. Nuri, I know that we just made some big announcements about Gaudi 3. And again, this is one of the reasons I joined Intel, is I really think the world, needs more than one option for compute when it comes to training large models. And I really think it's a good thing for everybody to see more options, more affordability, and even better performance. So tell us how you think Gaudi plays into the larger picture with compute and how companies should be thinking about that.
Absolutely. And as we discussed, I think we are knowing that compute is the new currency. So every company will require more compute for AI. And we are in this accelerated computing era. The classical way of compute doesn't really solve every single problem. You need dedicated ASIC devices. And from our end, it's Gaudi. And for the listeners, if you haven't heard about Gaudi, Gaudi is our AI accelerator that is specifically purpose-built for this mission. Gaudi has been around, we have Gaudi at AWS, but also we recently launched Gaudi 3 during the Vision conference last week. So it was a blast. So having an alternative for the customers to focus on two aspects. One, TCO. Many of the business decision makers who are listening to this will say, this is expensive. How do I get my AI expense under control? And this is going to be very important topic for Gaudi 3. So we did all the testing. So our performance is, again, depending on training and inferencing, 50% better than H100, which is the leading GPU in the market. But becoming this AI accelerator dedicated to AI, I think we have been also proven that 40% better energy consumption. So 40% is a lot.
It's a lot. That's no joke.
And if you look at the long tail of these things, with AI, you are not done in one day. This is a continuous investment. So if you have a language model, you have to train it, you have to fine tune it, you have to do the inferencing to get all the data, but you have to do training again with all the data sets. And then this is an infinite loop.
Doesn't stop.
This might go on and on and on, for cost prediction. So you have to make the right investment for your choice. That will really benefit the company in the long run. So that's where I think we are bringing choice to the market. So it's not about hey, you have to be on the cloud. or you have to be on premise. We are providing best of both worlds. Like, I mean, wherever you are, Intel got you covered. So with Gaudi 3, we definitely provide that option. And also, I want to highlight the open source ecosystem. So unlike the other solutions in the market, which are proprietary solutions that you have to learn something and like you have to deploy on a certain and specific hardware, we really work with the open source communities, and we really use that obfuscation layer on top of the AI solutions. So that really helps because we are where the developers are. And I think giving that open source component to AI solutions will definitely benefit many of the business decision makers, because then you're not tied to a specific set of people in the market.
You have options.
You have options. Like, and I remember like when I was at Microsoft before, and when we launched .NET way ago, but there were like Java developers in the market, and like you have to find that Java developer, that was it. So with .NET, which is open source, by the way, we expanded like, hey, C#, come on over, C++, come. Like you have Visual Basic, come over. Like, because it's the framework that matters, and you can develop. And that's how like suddenly Microsoft.NET picked it up. I believe like on the AI, the same thing is happening. So you mentioned the Hugging Face. If you look at the most downloaded like models, those are like really pushed with the community. So when you like have that community support behind you, it's the right way to scale. And you will get a more precise and also cost-effective solution, because they are leaning into support the community to get a better outcome from the solution, and not fueled by productivity or let's say specific targets in their mind to, hey, I want to add a 50% margin on my hardware because this is the time I'm the only option. No, like, I mean, they're trying to contribute to the long tail and how AI can help humanity. And I think with Gaudi 3, that's our mission. So we want to be helping to accelerate innovation. We want to help everyone on a cost-effective way, and we want to do it in a safe and secure way. And those are all the customer outcomes we want to achieve with Gaudi 3.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, the other thing though that I think you mentioned was power performance, which I think is becoming more important, because as AI grows, and shout out to CNCF Tech Sustainability. So we care about sustainability. We care about power, and actually we care about actually just being able to operationalize AI. Because if you think about how big the racks are, how much power they take, it's really expensive to build a data center. It's really hard to power that data center. And it's really hard to actually, it used to be, you fill a whole rack of systems with compute. Nowadays, because the compute is so power hungry, you've got racks that are hard to fill with compute because you can't get enough power to them, right? You can't cool them enough. So there's
you
all
actually
kinds
built
of
out
issues
a data
around
center with Habana. So you have like on the ground experience building out a data center. So tell us, why is it important that Intel has focused on centralizing around Ethernet, for instance, an open standard when it comes to
so absolutely. So again, open is important because we want everybody to be able to take advantage of the simplicity and the well-known behavior of a protocol like Ethernet. But when it comes to like building a data center, so we built a large data center around Gaudi originally, and that was a project that I helped with as a software architect, along with Greg Stoner, on the software side. And the interesting challenge there is that to actually build the data center, it requires so much power to actually run these AI accelerators, even Gaudi, which is more power performant, right, than competitor options. It's still so hard to do. You see in the world, Amazon's buying warehouses space next to power plants, literally because they have to power their data centers, and AI is very power hungry. So this is something, when you think about Gaudi, it's not just always about raw performance. Gaudi's the most performant thing out there right now that you could get. But aside from that, it's also power performant, which in the long run, when you talk about what's good for humanity, what's good for society, open is good, access is good. But really, we've got to start thinking about, can we actually sustain this level of compute for AI? And the answer has to be either we're efficient with it, like Gaudi, or we have to get smarter with how we're doing it, which is a completely different conversation for developers. But for businesses, you've got to be able to put these racks in your building, right? And you don't want to take up a bunch of space with an empty rack with a bunch of hardware that you can't really power, right? So that's where Gaudi also has a major advantage where people should look into it.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it's exciting that we're thinking about AI being everywhere. The fact that when you can push the compute down onto the edge, onto your AI PC, and run a model there efficiently, the right model that may be smaller and faster, absolutely everyone's going to want to do that because it's faster, more power efficient, it's more affordable. But then when you need to push compute up into the cloud because you're going to fine tune, 120 billion parameter model on your data, you're going to need options, right? And I think that's why I was so excited about Gaudi 2 and then Gaudi 3. The fact that I think every company is going to be fine tuning with their data on these larger models, and they're going to need compute. And so it's really exciting to see that, hey, there's more than one horse in this race now. And I'm excited about that. Nuri, it's about time to wrap up, but I'd just like to hear your thoughts as we close out. The next 12 months are going to be pretty exciting. I think the next 40 years is going to be exciting at Intel and with AI, but tell me, where do you think we're going to be? Just a fun prediction about AI in 12 months.
I think in the last 18 months, we have witnessed generative AI taking storm by storm all the innovation, like all this. Tony mentioned the stability, for example. So we have seen image models, video models right now, and also voice cloning and all this. Let's say text generation is not it's just the basics. I was wowed at the beginning. Now everybody does text, but our expectation really rised. If you ask me, in the next 6 months, I think there will be a big, let's say, buzz around adaptive AI, because things are getting more smarter. So we will see more, let's say, stepping stones for AGI. And I think adaptive AI is one of those big stepping stones. The AI will be good enough, I will call it good enough at this stage, to make some corrections on the way. And it will start to learn, and it's not like the machine learning based, again, it's an adaptive way. So, and it will start to train itself without any additional inputs from the external world. So this sounds great, but at the same time scary. So I think in the next 18 months, what I want to see is, I call it distributed intelligence. I don't think we will be able to trust AI's decision as human beings, because we will not be able to understand why AI made that decision. So we have to log it down. And maybe some of you know, I'm a big blockchain enthusiast. So I believe we have to use all the blockchain and AI together to make sure we log every single thing. So if the listeners are familiar with blockchain, what blockchain does is it's an immutable ledger. Like any ledger in the accounting, you say I have $100, I spent $20. You don't delete the 100 and write 80. It's additive, right? So because when someone comes to audit you, hey, what happened at this date? You roll back in time and say hey, I spent $20. That's why I have $80. Yep. Similarly, on AI, there will be complex reasoning in the upcoming years, and then maybe months, we will see. But in order to make that due diligence, we will build out systems, and it's not easy, by the way. So as we said, AI is compute hungry. It will be storage hungry as well. All these things will be stored somewhere, because the governments will push regulation on AI, which is the right thing to do, by the way. You don't fly an airplane without the pilot license. You have to pass through the exams. You can just spin up an LLM today and put it out of the world, and it might do crazy things, right? So we have to be really prescriptive on what AI is doing right now and how did it come to a conclusion to make that decision on the long term. So those are the two areas, like adaptive AI and like distributed intelligence in my mind.
Cool.
These are the big steps moving forward for AGI, because if like all the predictions and all the forecasting is true, with this pace of innovation and acceleration, by 2029, roughly, we will achieve AGI in not one place, in many labs, and people will not be aware that there's AGI. So right. And then like, how do we know that's another like Turing test maybe we will apply. How do we know an AI is an AGI? I mean, because as humans, we will be like,
not sure.
Really hard, right? So then we need that distributed intelligence to help us. This made this decision, this made this decision. So as a result of that, this is the testing system that this is an AGI. So, yeah, but again, it's a amazing like couple of years ahead. Cannot wait to witness all of those changes.
It's going to be exciting. Yeah. And I love that we're going to be at the coal face of all of it here at Intel. That's one of the reasons I joined. I'm so excited about it. Tony, I want to hear your quick prediction. Where are we going to be in 12 months? Go.
Oh man, 12 months. So I think in 12 months, I think where we're going to be is maybe not too different than actually where we're at right now, just because I think by the time, it takes a while for us to adapt as new hardware comes out. I think we're at the very leading edge of where we're getting this ability for clients with this first AI PC that Intel has released. You're getting the initial, I can probably do something on the edge feeling everywhere, right? Yep. So before you could say I could do it on big GPUs if you're on the edge, but not all that people have it. Now I'm going to have it on every box, but it'll take a year or two to roll that out. The same way, looking back, Centrino, it took a while to get there, right? So everybody had Wi-Fi on their laptop. Like nowadays we take it for granted. You got to have Wi-Fi everywhere. But that wasn't the case. I used to have to go plug in my laptop and Ethernet. So I think it won't be too different right now for the consumer, but I think developers, enterprises, and businesses are going to internally start shifting now. So then probably in 2 to 3 years, they'll be ready to take advantage of this. So for everybody who's listening, things may not look too different in a year, but internally, businesses are going to be making that move right now. And so it's important to kind of get ahead of that and start thinking about that future as you go.
Absolutely. Yeah. And everyone listening, I would just encourage you, if you're not a developer, actually the best thing to do is pick your favorite LLM, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or insert LLM name, and say, please teach me how to write a basic Python script. And the best thing ever is that you have this tutor who is patient and loves you and will be helpful. And then all of a sudden, you know how to start pulling the levers, right? So as the wave comes, you can ride it instead of get, bowled over by it. And then secondly, do things like download models locally and try to experiment that and see what's going on. Just get your hands on the levers and try. I'll close out just quickly with my prediction. I think in the 12 months, we'll see the release of agentic solutions that use model routing. What I mean by that is you'll have agents, which are more than LLMs. They'll be able to accomplish simple tasks like research this paper or code this bit of software or book my vacation. And the way they're going to be doing that is not by using one LLM or one type of model, but they'll be routing those things to the correct model, taking those inputs, evaluating, and then outputting. We'll start to see that where people start to trust, like, oh, this is actually doing what I want versus me hand holding it. That'll introduce a lot of creativity and excitement. But it's all going to take compute, whether it's on the cloud or on the edge. And I'm really excited that we're pushing so hard on that. Nuri, thanks so much for your time. I know you're very busy, and I appreciate you bringing your expertise to the show. And Tony, thanks for joining as well. I'm excited to continue to host these with you and discuss exciting, important topics. Nuri, where can people find you online if they want to engage and chit chat with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot for this conversation. So I think this was really eye-opening for me. Any AI discussion is really exciting nowadays. And I think being a developer in the background, so like this is the most exciting time to live while you can do a lot of things on AI and you can build up really disruptive technologies that might shape the world. So I use LinkedIn heavily. So if anybody wants to reach out to me, it's LinkedIn on the username Nuri Cankaya, and I'm checking my messages there frequently.
Fabulous. And I've noticed that we're getting to see you on X now as well. So everybody make sure to find Nuri on X as well.
Absolutely.
Tony, I know you're going to be with me on the show a lot, but just in case, where can people find you?
Oh, yeah. So I obviously have a sister podcast to this, Code Together, where we do talk about AI topics. Mostly it's a developer-focused podcast, but you can find me there. You can find me on X, LinkedIn, everywhere where I guess people are found. So, obviously reach out. Love to talk about this. You'll find me very active talking about AI topics, cloud topics, sustainability topics, pretty much everywhere you can.
And I listen to your show. It's fab. So just a little ad. Everybody should check it out. So thanks everybody for joining us. We really appreciate your time. We know that time is your most valuable asset. And please hit us up on social media or LinkedIn or X or wherever you are. We'd love to interact with you more and go along this AI journey with you. Take care. We'll see you next time.